you're staying cool. This is JC Audits. A lot of people would like to be in my position with this level of freedom. It's unbelievable. This level of support. Yeah. It's unbelievable. We need like a beginning and an end to everything, so let's have a little bit of an end to this. We can't just go on ad nauseum. Okay. Right, so that's running. Really good. Now before it gets too hot then, this is JC Audits. Welcome to JC Audits. So here we go, with a nice gentle run, gentle pace here on JC Audits. Gentle pace, gentle pace. It's an incredible period of my life, guys. Today is Wednesday. Wednesday the 24th of January 2026. The location, England. So incredible times here on JC Audits. Yeah. If you've been following my videos, you know roughly where I am. You know roughly what's going on. And that's how I like to keep things, because I'm in a similar position myself. Yes, I am. I think, therefore I am. So I'm thinking, therefore I am. If I wasn't thinking, then I wouldn't be. I'd be nothing. I'd be dead. I'd be just another element of organic matter that was then decaying, or maybe to be burnt or buried. That's the way it is. So currently I'm alive. There's lots of things that are alive, and lots of things that never had life, or you could say that they're dead. But to say something is dead is to imply that it once had life. So if I look at my car and I say it's dead, that's a figurative way of speaking, because a car can never have life apart from figurative life. However, if I looked at a carrot before I was going to chop it up and put it in my tea, and I said this carrot is dead, it wouldn't be immediately obvious what we were talking about. because it has a use. Even in the carrot's death, it has a use as food. However, if you looked at a woodlouse and the woodlouse had been poisoned and the woodlouse was now dead, as in it was not moving for a few days, then you could look at that woodlouse and tell people that it's dead. So, and people would understand you. My pants are falling down now. So, yeah. So that is an important distinction to make between living things and dead things. So when I say I am alive, I believe that because I believe that I have life. I believe I have consciousness. Let me just pull up my pants. So I believe I have consciousness. So that really helps me determine if I'm alive. However, if I was asleep and somebody pointed to me and said, "Is he alive?" You know, and I was just there, just not moving, my eyes closed, somebody nearby might say, he's just sleeping. By that implies that yes, I'm alive, however, I don't have consciousness. So that's really interesting. So consciousness as a form of life, as a measure of life, it's not really a reliable one. So when we say that AI, it doesn't have consciousness, it's not alive, not a good measure. Not necessarily a good measure. So let's forget about that. So how else would I say that I'm alive? So yeah, I'm conscious, but we've determined that isn't such a great measure of being alive. How about breathing? Yeah, that's a pretty good measure. You've got grass, which have a kind of respiration in the sense that they emit oxygen, take on board CO2. So you could argue that there's a kind of respiration going on there. You could argue that. But what else? So respiration could be a measure. So I'm breathing at the moment. However, if I was in a coma and I was like medically sort of laid out after an accident, then I might be breathing. And so yeah, I would be alive, and that then corresponds to some kind of measure of being alive. However, do we prefer the taking in of oxygen and emitting of CO2 as a form of life? No, because we've determined that plants don't really take in oxygen and emit CO2 like us. So, and we say that plants are alive. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good measure. Respiration, gaseous respiration. So let's then look at AI. Does AI do gaseous respiration, whether it's CO2 in and oxygen out, or oxygen out and CO2 in? Let me just repeat that again. CO2 in, oxygen out like plants, or oxygen in and CO2 out like mammals, for example. Right. Well, computers don't respire, do they? They don't take in any oxygen. They don't even emit oxygen. They might heat up the air the ambient air, so nitrogen, CO2, oxygen, and some rare earth gases like argon, krypton, xenon even. So yeah, but yeah, so might even do that. That dog there who barked at me, is the dog alive? Yeah, it's indulging in most likely aerobic respiration. Possibly a bit of anaerobic if it, if it committed to doing something. But yeah. And the human, the Homo sapiens, walking that dog, alive? Yeah, alive. The buildings to my right, alive. It's a funny question, that. Almost a poetic question. Because poetry would then bridge the gap between cold hard facts and fantasy imagination. So to say the house is alive would be, well, it would be, a direct way of saying that, a very direct way of saying this is actually something of the imagination. Whereas if you say it's, oh, that house looks as though it's alive, or that house is as it's alive, or it doesn't quite make sense, but yeah, that's more of an indirect way. But yeah, so all very interesting indeed, if I might say. So is the house alive? Well, what if there was music, parties indoors, people dancing, people singing? Would you say the house is alive? Well, you would certainly, you could say that. It would be classed as something that's unusual. So you could definitely say the house is alive, and it would make sense to a lot of people. But it wouldn't actually be true in that sense. Because we're referring to the house. The house is made of, well, usually it's made of building materials which don't tend to be organic matter as such. Stone, I think, is inorganic matter. Building materials, metal, but not wood. Wood is an organic matter. Yeah. So my argument then is the house is not alive, even if it's buzzing with different people. Yeah. Yeah. So the house is not alive. What should we look to other things? Should we look to the sky? Is that alive? Well, the sky is a very big concept. It's a bit like a house in the sense that it's an inorganic concept, a term, contains living things. The sky might contain birds, because we're talking about different layers of the sky, up to kind of like stratosphere, maybe slightly beyond, ionosphere maybe. But yeah, I don't know how far the term sky actually extends, but would contain birds, But like a house, it's inorganic in the sense that it's not conscious, although we determine it's not such a great measure of being alive. It's not breathing, so it doesn't really take in oxygen and emit oxygen. There's no form of or taking oxygen and emit CO2 or vice versa. So there's no, as far as I understand it, no method of oxygen exchange, no apparatus of oxygen exchange in the sky. Therefore, yeah. So yeah, so sky is not alive. Right, let's talk about the Earth. Is the Earth alive? Well, a bit like a house and the sky, it might contain things that are living. It might contain things that are now dead, organic matter like wood. So that the wood is chopped, it's dead organic matter. Dead woodlouse, dead organic matter. So in that sense, it's like the house and the sky. It's only poetic if you say the Earth is alive. And environmentalists, for example, may or may not use the words, or poets might use the words "the Earth is alive" to kind of harness that wonderful imagination that we have as Homo sapiens to drive us towards a common cause. For example, environmentalism. So yeah, so environmentalism which will enable, for example, humans to work together, a bit like Christianity. Meet two Christians that never have met each other but just know each other. They're Christians, they're more likely to cooperate, more likely than maybe other people. But these are groups, Christians or even women, men, men's groups, etc. If they know they have something in common, they might be more likely to cooperate, despite differences of physical appearances, etc. So propinquity, I think is the term. Look it up. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah. So the Earth is dead. The sky is dead. The trees, they're alive. The ones that aren't, can't see them. There might be an element of respiration just after you cut the tree. It will continue to still respire, just as if you cut me down, remove my legs or take away my heart. Well, less taking away the heart because that removes my pump. But there might be some residual oxygen exchange going on for fractions of seconds. Yeah, so very interesting. So as I talk to you now, I'm aware of my own impending death. Earth, 4.5 billion years old. The universe, say, roughly 10 billion years old. Say roughly, because I stand to be corrected, so it's something we usually talk about. My life expectancy, another 20 years, plus or minus 20 years. So, all this very interesting. So just to give you an idea about what that actually means. So humans they so 20 versus 4.5 billion in the years of the cost of the earth, so the age of the earth. So if I said to you, give me £20, you may or may not do it, probably won't. If I said to you, give me £4.5 billion, you might think I'm mad. Okay? So, so if I said to you, give me £2,000, that might be a more realistic figure. And 2,000 compared to 20, well, factor of 100, isn't it? 200, and then 1,000, and then multiply that by the 2, because we're talking about 20s. Factor of 100. So that's kind of. So what's the percent of 20 compared to 2,000? Well, it's 2%, isn't it? So 2% of that 20 is 2,000, which is incredible. So 2,000, so 20, 200, 2,000. So 2% of my lifespan. Say if I only live 20 years. So compared to when Jesus Christ lived, say 2,000 years ago. So 20%, so 2%. I'm 2% of that timeline. Say if Jesus Christ existed, I don't know, 50,000 years from now. So it's 50,000 years from now. So now I'm 2,000 years in front of Jesus Christ. And then if it was 50,000, that would be 0.2%. And then you're going to decrease that further. It say 0.1, and then decrease it further, maybe even 0.08% of Jesus Christ's life, you know. So I think I'm just roughly saying that. I might be completely wrong, might be wrong in my maths. So it's very interesting. It's just really interesting. But we live actually, our lives now in 2026 AD is actually quite close to Jesus Christ. Really quite close. And even closer to Allah and the Prophet Muhammad's lifetime, peace be upon him. So that's very interesting, and any new religions that came subsequently. So that's all really super interesting. Here in JC Audits. So going back to the numbers then. How are we doing for time actually? 8 minutes left. So, so where was I? Talking about timelines and stuff like that. So, how am I going to do this? With respect to timelines and quantities, so I talked about 20 years, as in £20. I talked about 2,000 years. Okay, I talked about that as well. And then how about talking about after 2,000, like I spent 2,000 on this, I don't know, this upgrade for my car. And then say if I wanted to do 125,000. So we got to 2,000 to 125,000. So then when you say you talk about 125,000 years, You jump from 2,000 to 125,000. You could buy a small house for that in the UK. 120,000, yeah. Then you talk about when our Homo sapiens left Africa, East Africa, 125,000 years ago. Again, we look about the politics now here. It's minor. Okay? Then we look at 125,000, and then we look at houses that are worth, say, 6 million. So you've got £125,000 and then you've got £6 million. Yeah, their house is worth 6 million. Their houses in London worth easy £1 million. So if you say then £125,000 house versus a £6 million house. So 125 was when we left Africa, and £6 million house, that's actually when we were diverging from roughly like chimpanzee type bipedal mammal type structures, organisms. Roughly it happened around there, the sort of cross, when we're sort of crossing over from bipedal hominins like Australopithecus afarensis, aka Lucy, to then subsequent models such as the descendants of Homo erectus, which is a hugely stable and successful and long-lived type of human that lived we've lived for 125,000 years. You're looking about 1.5 million years for Homo erectus. A tremendously successful unit, successful conglomeration of cells and different things. And if you're looking for the answer to, is my dog, would have my dog been more intelligent than Homo erectus? No. Homo erectus would have been far more intelligent than your dog. I'm not saying it would have been more fit, but your dog, in comparison to Homo erectus would have it over your dog anytime. Tool use, probably mourning, funerals, that kind of thing. So what about those civilizations? And did Jesus Christ come to save any of the Homo erectuses? Unlikely. Are there many Homo erectus in heaven? That is a great question to ask. Was Jesus Christ only interested in saving the Homo sapiens? It's a really, really interesting question here on JC Audits. So anyway, someone then from those figures, so 20, lend me £20, I've got 20 years to live. Yeah. That to 2000, Jesus Christ's lifetime, and then that to 125,000 years, Homo sapiens exit from Africa, and then moving on further, 6 million years divergence of human descendants from chimpanzee descendants. Let's put it that way. So you need to make these mental shortcuts. So 6 million years, and then from 6 million years, remember that London house worth 6 million? We're going to jump from 6 million to 66 million, or 65 million, yeah? So that's going to correspond to 66 to 66. There might be a few buildings worth 66 million. There might be, but I don't really know about that. It's not 66 million, that's more like company big, company net worth. So 66 million, we're talking then about humans didn't exist. They hadn't existed at all. They hadn't developed by evolution. There were mammals. The dinosaurs were still knocking around, but this was roughly the time frame of a lot of the dinosaurs' extinction. So terrestrial dinosaurs died. Cook's Club crater was a huge explosion when the meteorites hit the ground. Big, massive rock from space came down, smashed into the Earth near South America. The evidences can be seen. blacken the skies with the impact debris, blotting out the sun, killing off plants, blocking the light. That was hell. A lot of those beautiful dinosaurs, I wouldn't say the friendly dinosaurs, died, but they must have had some affection for their young, just as birds have some affection towards their young. And woodlice I'd say that the dinosaurs had more affection from to their young than woodlice have towards theirs. Woodlice, ants. Ants, I don't know much about woodlice, apart from the mothers carry the baby woodlice in pouches, sacks in their body, anyway, around their body, so, but anyway, and they're transparent, but anyway, babies, pretty much. And then, so dinosaurs have I believe have more affection than, say, ants would have towards their babies because of the size of the brain. I would have said there's more going on. I mean, people that argue that it's nothing to do about brain size, brain function, then I say, okay, but they're not going to have less affection than birds of prey would to their young, and the preening of their young, or whatever that they do, feeding of their young, mouth-to-mouth feeding, the birds feed the young, it's very touching to see. So, not going to be as affectionate as so my argument then is, we talk about these lovely dinosaurs that got extinct, and here we are, we're done. So we're not going to go for sprints, we're just going to stretch out, just going to keep it cool, keep it real. So it's 30 minutes of jogging, of activity. Really proud of that. So 66 million guys, and then from 66 million, from this big we go to 500. 500 million, and then we talk about 500 million. We talk about the Cambrian explosion of life forms in the sea. There are companies valued 500 million US dollars or even pounds. So we're talking about the Precambrian explosion there. And then for 500 million, we're talking about 500 million. We're talking about 3.5 billion. So it's not a huge jump from 500 million to 3.5 billion. And that's roughly when life started on Earth, 3.5 billion years ago. And it obviously took a long time for things to get going, for these systems, these hugely complex systems, anaerobic respiration, prokaryotes to eukaryotes. This is the synthesis of bacterial organelles within the eukaryotic system. So it's huge progress that took billions of years to do, DNA, cross-checking, all those different kinds of systems. And then 3.5 billion years ago, life started. 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth started. Formed from cosmic dust debris, solidified. Jupiter was closer to the sun, moved out. And the stuff that formed our planets had, and our sun indeed, which formed around the same time. You could say our planets formed from the crap, from the shit that was left over from the formation of the sun, stuff the sun didn't need. But the same elements in the sun and the Earth, okay, all those elements were created from the explosion of a sun, but not our sun, it's previous generation of suns before our sun. So there was an explosion shooting out these elements into the universe and solidifying, forming planets, stars again. So Our sun is a second generation star in that sense, and then there, in the cycle of the universe, there might be a few generations of stars, third, fourth, fifth generations of stars. But let's face it, in 500 million years' time, I think the sun is going to be pretty hot. And pretty big. I think in a billion years' time, water would have evaporated from Earth, I believe. I might be wrong on that. So yeah, a billion, that's in the future. But if you go back a billion years, life had existed. So we've existed a long time on this planet. And why do we protect Homo sapiens' life? Because who's protecting Homo sapiens' life? Well, it's the medical profession who are Homo sapiens. But I don't go around seeing sharks and wombats and chimpanzees and ants sort of campaigning for our rights. I see dogs being affectionate. I see cats being affectionate. Meowing and barking and protecting. And I see them rescuing other animals, but I don't see them fighting for our survival. So who's got our back? Who's got Homo sapiens back? I really do wonder that. Who's got our back? So I don't think there's many Homo sapiens that have got our back. Let's have a little look in here. Oh yeah, still looking. So yeah, there we go. So just bear that in mind, yeah? So who's got Homo sapiens back? No one. And I'm going to say now, how are we doing?